I don't get the whole like co-founder thing. It's better to um to be solo or to work with like just your life partner because you're one family anyway, because I think the equity is like very expensive. You only have to make half like a company half the size if
Mm,
you own like double the amount of equity. Whilst if you build a multi-billion dollar business, it doesn't matter. I think for most companies, it is a lot harder to like double the size of your business as opposed to just, go solo, build something like smaller, but
mm.
own more of it.
Welcome to Brave. Learn from Southeast Asia's best tech leaders. Build the future, learn from our past, and stay human in between. No BS on success. I'm Jeremy Au, venture capitalist, serial founder, Harvard MBA, science fiction nerd, and dad of 2 daughters. Every week, we debate startup news, interview changemakers, answer listener questions, and share personal insights. Join our movement of over 40,000 members and get transcripts, resources, and community at www.bravesea.com. Stay well and stay brave.
Hey, Rob, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you, man.
I think we've been friends for quite a while, and so I'm really excited to finally have you on the podcast.
Yeah, no, happy to be here.
So, Rob, could you introduce yourself?
So I'm Rob. I've been working on startups for about 15 years. My main business, ContactOut, is a prospecting tool. So we provide contact data, phone numbers, and email addresses to recruiters and sales teams. I bootstrapped that to roughly about like 70 people on the team and doing 9 million profit per year. And then I also do a bit of angel investing. I have a startup accelerator called Athena Ventures, which is like the little like logo that you see here, the little fire logo.
Yeah, amazing. And I think, you're one of the few, I think, say, regional founders in Southeast Asia who are bootstrap, profitable, and also, kind of like thoughtful about what the business is and your own, personal journey. But, I'd love to just jump straight into it. So tell me about the company and how you got started on it.
One approach that I like to take is, as like Paul Graham says, like to do a startup, you have to be like an expert in a space, and you have to, create something that is 10 times better than what currently exists. So what I did when I started was I looked at, lots of venture funded companies, just basically go on Crunchbase, look at all the venture funded companies, look at all the companies in like the YC startup portfolio, picked an industry. For me, it was like contact data that I thought like, okay, there should be like strong demand for this. Everybody kind of needs contact data. And then I went in detail to study like basically every company that existed in the space, like in depth, pretending to be another company and taking sales calls with all my competitors, and then, getting the pitch decks, like recording all their collateral. And they kind of say that creativity is like stealing from 100 different sources. So obviously, if you've seen everything, then you can like make the best of all aspects of that. So that was the first phase. The next phase was, I guess, getting insider knowledge. So I would find all the ex-employees of similar companies. For example, Zoom Info is a NASDAQ listed company that's like $1 billion revenue. Apollo is another one, like $1 billion company. So I reached out to a lot of the like ex-employees or ex like C-suites, just on LinkedIn, be like, hey, like I'm building something similar for like this different geography. I'd love to like get your advice and mentorship. Would you be open to like a consulting call? And happy to like pay you for your time. It's like $500 or whatnot. One interesting thing was after doing like a bunch of these, I might have done like a dozen or so. And for the especially good ones, I'll try to keep like a long-term relationship. So I'd be like, okay, can we do like every month or like twice a month, and then give away a small amount of equity, like 0.5% was what I gave to some of my early mentors. The surprising thing was like one of these guys, Santosh, he was the VP product at Zoom Info and, built that to $1 billion. And he was the CEO at Apollo, also helped them build to $1 billion. He actually ended up like coming on to work with me as my co-CEO for 2 years. And then before that, for a whole year, he was like advising us. So we got a lot of like inside information via this kind of approach.
And I think what's interesting is that, yes, you wanted to build a product that's better, but, how did you feel like you could be 10x better? Because, people have been selling contact information or doing research. I'm just kind of curious how you thought about doing it differently.
Yeah, I think once you like look into all the ways that people are doing it and you study like, dozens of different sources and you kind of combine everything together, and it's not like one thing, but it's like a variety of things. So there's like, different like data vendors and data brokers that you could buy from as well. There's like different ways to clean the data. Obviously there's like a go-to-market piece with, like a sales process and, like pitch decks, etc. So another guy that we worked with was Doug Hall, who was the first the first sales manager at Glassdoor, and also like VP of sales at one of our competitors, Inteller. So it took them to like 30 million revenue. So he shared a lot of the sales practices, but I think it's everything like stacked together.
And so you felt like maybe when you say stacked together, you mean like all in one or more seamless, or how do you mean by that?
As in, it's just like, like 20, 30 different ways to be slightly better. So maybe you'll learn like the sales process from one company, you'll learn like data sourcing from another company, and then you'll combine all this. And in aggregate, if you study, 100 different sources and you put it all together, then you're probably going to be better than any of the individual sources.
So, how would you say that the company is differentiated from, for example, ZoomInfo obviously is one, but I mean, the other players are also going quite aggressively after the space, and maybe their venture capital backed as well.
Yeah, to be honest, like it's not really. When I started, there were a lot fewer players who were able to get a foothold, and then we focused on, we focused on like recruiting,
Right.
and the data for recruiting is a bit different than for sales. So we got a bit of a foothold there, but honestly, we didn't accelerate like some of our competitors did, where if you raise like hundreds of millions of dollars. But then I guess the benefit of that is because we didn't raise, then the team owns like basically all the equity, and the profit margins at like around 70%. As opposed to, if you raise like $200-300 million, like some of our competitors, the outcome for like the founding team is probably like not so good, especially kind of dependent on the time.
Yeah. Makes sense. I mean, I think what you're saying is that the end state is not too different in terms of the product set and so forth, but the path to get there is a night and day. And, you've talked about bootstrapping and you talk about venture capital. How would you compare those two experiences? I mean, you yourself have many friends who are venture capital backed. You yourself are bootstrapped. How do you think about it?
Yeah, I think we talked about this before, right? Of so like the founders of Loom like exited recently, right? And I think I was talking to one of them, and I think they walked away with maybe 50 million after tax. I think he quit early, so he probably gave up some of the sort of vesting. But yeah, 50 million after tax. I spent about like 10 years doing Loom, $1 billion exit. And that's, the likelihood of that happening is like very low. That's like the dream scenario if you're venture backed. But at the same time, like joining some sort of local business communities like Entrepreneurs Organization in Singapore, there are folks that have like just traditional businesses, like maybe they're selling secondhand electronics, or maybe they have like a coconut farm in the Philippines. And these guys, they've been making like $1 million a year, but they've been doing it for like 15, 20 years. I calculated this, that if you just make $1 million a year for 15 years and you invest that like just in the NASDAQ or, at like 14%, 14.5% per year, you will also get to 50 million. And I think the crazy thing is that like most of the wealth in the world is made by these sort of like small to medium business owners. I think they were doing like a study of all the private jet owners in the US, like who are they? And it turns out like, okay, they're just some like car dealership owner in the Midwest or something like that.
Why do you think people really like venture capital so much?
I think it's misguided. I think it's kind of like credit card debt in a way, in that everybody likes to max out their credit card. And instead of thinking about how can I grow my business, I think, okay, if I just like take a round, it'll solve all my problems. It doesn't. Usually like more money doesn't help with growth. Like figuring out how to grow helps with growth. And usually like more people, more money probably adds more like chaos and confusion to that process.
And I think there's a lot of good statistics you mentioned about, obviously bootstrapping and businesses. Why do you think people don't really see it or understand it? I mean, it's one thing to, be attracted to venture capital, but I think, it's also people seem to have a blind spot around, bootstrapping.
I mean, I think that might just be a function of like us kind of playing more in the venture backed like startup space where perhaps like, tech startup founders, would do it less. But I think more generally, the vast majority of businesses are bootstrapped. I'd even say like the vast majority of like, they're not like just called startups. They're just called like business owners, right? Like small business owners. They probably never heard about venture capital. And yet, these folks are probably way wealthier, like on average, than like your sort of like Silicon Valley type founder.
Do you think there's some aspect where it's like some sort of like geographic component to it as well, like America versus, I don't know, global distributed versus Asia? Is there some geographic component to it?
I don't know. Right? I think even globally, right? Like it's probably most of the wealth is just like small business owners.
Right.
And then startups is just like a subset of that.
Yeah. And so I think what's interesting is that obviously you've been thinking about this like funding paths and so forth. And what was it like, building a company in the early days and when you were like, really small? Like, were you the first person in, and like, who was your first employee? Like, how did you get the MVP up?
Yeah. So I started as a sole founder, tried to have a co-founder several times, didn't work out. Yeah, I think really it's just like trying to, like, as Paul Graham says, like be the world's like sort of foremost experts on what I was like building, and then just like learning really fast. I can go more into that if you want. But yeah, I think just like reading a crap ton of books. I like kind of like doing audiobooks or whatever I need to read, doing it at like 2-3 times speed, like exercising whilst I'm listening, because otherwise if I'm just reading, I'll fall asleep. But I think you have like better stamina or you can like, yeah, like learn stuff for like a longer amount of time if you're like being active.
Yeah. And those early days, you build out the MVP. Like, how did you get your first customer?
Yeah. Initially it was just like emailing people. So using like dog fooding my own products, emailing people about it. From there, I had a background in like SEO, so did like a bunch of SEO. And then from there, we did 500 startups in like Silicon Valley. So when we were there physically, we reached out to some of our like customers who were already using the tool, and then, went to the office and kind of did like more of an enterprise sales process. So mostly my wife and business partner Morning, she ran that.
And I guess, a lot of people are curious about solo founding, right? Because a lot of advice is about, hey, you need to have a co-founder. I think that's one. And then two, of course, is can you actually succeed as a solo founder? So what are your thoughts about that?
I don't get the whole like co-founder thing. I think, well, in a way, like I wasn't exactly solo either, in that like before my wife was like working with me, we weren't really making that much like revenue. So she closed like probably the first $1 million of like revenue, like pretty much like mostly herself. I have a CTO that I work with as well, but between me and my wife, we kind of earned the majority of equity, and then I started like by myself. So that's sort of the caveat. But I would say it's better to be solo or to work with like just your life partner, because you're one family anyway, because I think the equity is like very expensive. You only have to make half like a company half the size if you earn like double the amount of equity. Whilst if you build a multi-billion-dollar business, it doesn't matter. I think for most companies, it is a lot harder to like double the size of your business as opposed to just, go solo, build something like smaller, but earn more of it.
Right. And, what's interesting is that, you also share that your wife is also still your business partner as well. What's it like? Because a lot of people, are worried or scared or, how's that experience been?
Yeah, so we never fought over the business. We always had like a fairly clear like division of responsibilities. Like she'll do sales, I'll do like product and other stuff. And then we only like fought once we had kids, over kids and like other stuff. So not over business.
Not over the business. I guess the other part about it is, you know, how did you get the MVP up? Did you code it yourself? Did you hire engineers to do it? Did you get the CTO to come in? Because I think a lot of people are like, hey, you know, like I would want to make something happen, but I need to get a co-founder because I need a CTO or a guy to do sales. I'm just kind of curious how you thought about that.
Yeah, I taught myself how to code. Because I was kind of like, okay, if I'm doing a tech business, I should probably know the tech. Yeah. I think that from there, then, you know, initially I did some coding myself, but then, you know, I hired a team, work with the team to build stuff and, you know, work with my CTO. But I feel like it's almost like a necessity to know the technology if you're going to build a tech business, because that is what will enable you to be like, okay, well, who are the good engineers and like, what exactly do I need to do? I think it's very difficult to like product manage something and, you know, split it out into, okay, what needs to be done if you don't know how to do it yourself. Yeah. That sort of goes to what I'm like spending a lot of my time on right now, which is because I'm not spending like, mostly it's my wife running the core business, and I've been trying to figure out, okay, what useful stuff can I work on next? So I'm actually spending probably like the next 2 years just like learning about science and engineering. So yeah, just reading textbooks, trying to get like more technical depth that would like enable me to do, I guess, like more interesting or more like impactful stuff.
What's your approach to learning?
Loaded question. Where to begin? So yeah, obviously like the things that we're talking about, like studying companies, reading books, like audiobooks whilst running is really good hack. Because with that, right, like if you go for like an hour run every day, or if you go to the gym, and then you listen to books at like 2-3 times speed, you can probably finish a book like every week. Because, you know, book probably 9 hours or something, 3 hours a week. It's a lot more time efficient. More recently, I've been diving into like textbooks of like science, engineering. I don't know. So I have like a foldable phone that I bought, and I'm basically just reading PDFs of like textbooks. So I'll ask ChatGPT like, hey, what are the like engineering or like physics or biology textbooks that like Harvard or MIT or Stanford uses? And then I'll just get that, I'll put it on my phone, I'll read it, or I get it, you know, you could just have it read out loud, and the voiceover is like good enough these days, just on like Acrobat, like Adobe PDF, that you can listen to it basically as an audiobook. And then if you don't know what it's going on about, you could just like send a screenshot over to ChatGPT, or now like Android has it such that you just hold the power button, you can ask Gemini. And yeah, the explanation is probably better than like any university professor anyway. So I think like in recent months, like the speed that you could kind of learn about this stuff is maybe like 3 times faster than it was before, because you don't know the answer, you just ask and you will know. So that's what I'm doing right now. I feel like I need like more background knowledge. And then eventually I can probably work on some like deep tech stuff. I take a bit of inspiration from, I guess, like what Elon did after he sold PayPal, in that, you know, he spent like a couple of years reading about like chemistry and like, you know, rockets, like car manufacturing, all this sort of like engineering stuff. And from there, after those, you know, a few years of study, then he went to like find the experts in those fields, maybe made some investments, and then started getting more involved operationally. And that kind of led to like SpaceX and Tesla and I guess like Neuralink and everything else.
So when you're doing all of this learning, do you think there's a purpose to it, or do you feel like it's more like, you know, just kind of like exploration and more of such?
I guess I'm a bit like bored of my main business, to be honest. I'm kind of like, okay, is this the like most meaningful thing or the highest impact thing that I could be doing with my time? You know, doing like a SaaS company, like providing kind of contact data, and it's not. So now I'm trying to find what to do next. I think it's partly thinking about like what is like high impact, but a lot of it is just like curiosity. It's just like, okay, now I'm like reading like Bruce Albert's like microbiology, and it's just like, oh, this is how like the cells in your body work. Or I'm like going through like Richard Feynman's physics lectures in textbook form, and it's like, oh, this is, you know, how the laws of the universe work. So I think it's just really fascinating to know. And then I think I'm especially excited by some of the stuff that like Google is working on. Like I've been following Demis Hassabis, because I was surprised that this guy, you know, Nobel Prize winner for AlphaFold, he was like half Singaporean, or he like, you know, spent a lot of his childhood here. But yeah, some of that stuff is like really exciting with like, obviously like AlphaFold won the Nobel Prize in biology, but also, you know, they're using AI to control the plasma for like nuclear fusion to help like create better like energy. Or they have this thing called it's called Genome, I think, which is using AI to predict new types of materials. So they predicted 2 million new types of materials that are chemically stable, whereas before we had like 30,000, and out of that 30,000 was things like lithium batteries, graphene, you know, solar panels. So there could be like, I don't know, like a battery that's like 5 times more efficient. So I don't know nearly enough to actually work on some of this stuff, but the plan right now is just spend like 2 years, read all the textbooks and go from there. And I kind of regret not doing that like earlier on in my life.
So obviously, you know, there's the question obviously of what to do with your life and studying all that stuff. So what were you studying in your early years? I think you were a law student in the past.
Yeah, I feel like I wasted a lot of time in my 20s.
How so?
I had a lot of fun. You know, so I studied like, I kind of changed around a lot. I did law, I did a bit of computer science, I did a bit of maths, I did like finance, but mostly I was kind of just bumming around, going to parties. I think I spent a lot of my 20s just like figuring out my own mental health and like untangling my own mind. Because I think growing up was a very socially awkward kid, had a lot of anxiety, spent a lot of my 20s, I guess like chasing girls as you do, because trying to like feel less lonely or find like a life partner. And, you know, read a lot of self-help as well, which I think some of the like the new age kind of meditation stuff or self-acceptance. Like there's a book called Self-Compassion and you know, Eckhart Tolle and like Tara Brach, that all helps. But I think what helps the most is just settling down with my wife, Morny. And it's like really surprising how much mental capacity is freed up once you stop worrying about like dating. You redirect all that like mental capacity to you know, to learning, or to building business and doing other stuff.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, you know, would there be any advice that would give to your younger 20-year-old self?
I think when I was like 12 or something, I read like Rich Dad Poor Dad, as like, you know, everybody does. I think what I regret is if like 12-year-old me had picked up, had like, you know, found out about like what Demis Hassabis is doing, or, you know, picked up like Richard Feynman's like books, his popular books, like, you know, Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, or and got more into science and then actually started learning the science. I think I optimized too much for wealth building. And then I realized that, you know, after a certain amount of income, which really is not that much, I think maybe, you know, like 200K, maybe 300K for a family of spending money, you really don't have any like gain in happiness beyond that. And then, you know, I've spent like decades just, you know, trying to like make money or to guide my life towards like, you know, financially driven decisions. Whereas I regret not like spending more of my time on like, okay, learn science, figure out stuff that can really make a broader impact. So now I'm like following, you know, guys like John von Neumann, who like created like the computer, or you know, the creation of like the transistor, and like John Bardeen and William Shockley that made the transistor, and the sort of background in chemistry that led to like computer chips. So I'm like, oh, okay, like maybe I should have spent like 10 years, 15 years building up that expertise so I can do something better. Because I think if you're excellent in any field, you're going to make money anyway. So why not like, you know, do something that can be useful as well.
Yeah. And when you think about, you know, useful and science and all that stuff, like what are you most excited about these days?
I think the stuff that like Google DeepMind is working on, because if you have like a new like way of computing, which is like all this AI stuff, then that can lead to like a lot more like new discoveries in whether it's in like biology and chemistry of like discovering new materials, or I think Google just like open sourced the like all the druggable targets in the human body to help with like disease to new chemicals. It's like, okay, well, we discovered the transistor. What other like materials or things can we construct that would have the same level of impact as the transistor? I think like Microsoft just created some new material that allows like quantum computing to happen on a new chip. So it's like stuff like that. It's like, okay, this could create like the whole new like computer age, or I don't know, maybe we'll figure out like how to solve like all disease, and or maybe we'll get like basically like limitless energy from figuring out like nuclear fusion.
So what's interesting is that, you have kids now and you're also thinking about the future, building a future as well. What do you think, we have kids about the same age as well. So I'm just kind of curious, like, what do you think their life is going to be like? Because, we grew up with the Nokia phones, the Blackberries, and, the new iPhones. That was our coming of age moment. I don't know what you think about their future will be like.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully good. Yeah, hopefully good. I don't really have an answer to that. I'm still sort of thinking about like, how can I be like how can I sort of help my kids like go down a good path? Yeah, I don't know.
So how would you raise your kids? Like, how would you raise them from your protocol, or your approach? How would you think about it? Would you let them do law? Would you let them explore their fields? Would you push them towards more science? I'm just kind of curious how you think about that.
Honestly, I don't think I'm much of an expert at this. I'm more trying to think about like what should I do with my life, and if my kids like are interested in what I'm working on, then they can follow. But if not, I'd want to give them like all the freedom to like decide their own path and to sort of do stuff that is of interest to them. Because I think at the end of the day, it's hard to give an opinion on like, okay, what is a meaningful life? Because I think for some people they could be like, oh, I just want to like go surfing all day, or I want to like play music. I think it's so like subjective. Like my wife would sometimes say to me, she'd be like, okay, I'm like too obsessed over like wanting to make an impact. It's like why be so focused on trying to make an impact as opposed to just like spending time with family or traveling or just like having a good time and like just enjoying the day to day? Because I mean, if the universe has been here for billions of years, it's going to be here for billions of years after. It's like the universe doesn't need you to make an impact. It's like, it's fine as it is. It's like, who are you to think that you can even make an impact? Like, we're just all kind of like specks of dust. And at the end of the day, it's just like this whole impact thing is just like, I guess we do it because, well, like, okay, this is kind of like interesting or pleasurable or like a way to spend time. But somebody else can have a completely different perspective. And it's almost like, well, who's to say like, who's right? There's no, yeah.
So what's your philosophy in life then?
Well, for me, I think the impact part is important. Also, like just enjoying the day to day is important, because sometimes I like think about if I, work on this stuff too much, and I think about, okay, what am I doing in the moment to moment? It's just, I'm staring at a screen of pixels. I'm bashing like keys on a keyboard, and then I'm telling myself how meaningful this is. And, maybe I should like step away and like spend more time with my kids or my family, or like hang out with friends. Travel, I think, I try to travel like every, like once or twice a month. I spent most of my 20s backpacking. I love like scuba diving. I go spearfishing. I think just like seeing nature and having like, just having like awesome experiences, like seeing the world is like really cool.
Yeah, amazing. What do you do for fun as a hobby?
I think all of the above, like either learning science, thinking about like, what should I do that's like useful, working on the business, working on the startup accelerator, spending time with kids, traveling.
Yeah.
I think all of it is, I'm pretty much like trying to optimize for like what balance of like all these activities is like, the most like pleasurable.
Yeah. And I think it's a good point that you raised about accelerator, because you've been running that. So you're not a fan of venture capital, but you have been funding startups. Kind of walk us through a little bit about what you're thinking there and your approach.
Yes, it's very contradictory. I think, I kind of see venture capital as like credit card debt, in that if you don't need to take it, don't take it. And there's a lot of like downsides to it. But if you're like, if you're, if you can't pay the bills or you can't find time to focus full time in your business and you just need some capital to start out, then yeah, maybe taking either like, credit card loan or like an angel investment could help. I think the first check is what was the most meaningful for me. Like I only ever took like one check from StartMate. I did 500 startups, but I actually backed out of the program, which is like a different story. But that first check from StartMate got me to commit to joining my business. And then it was also an accelerator. So there was like guidance on, okay, here's how you build the business. And, we went over to Silicon Valley. We met like other successful founders. And I think that probably more so like the guidance and the commitment from like taking a check from external investors and having other people be like, okay, I believe in what you're doing, making me commit and change my career to like going full, like, just spending at least a good next couple of years on doing a startup. I think that was more important. But I think, if you're a business and you have like money, you're making revenue already, maybe you plateaued, you don't know how to get to the next growth cycle. I think then like taking money might not solve your growth problems. I also think that if you just spend like long enough, like a lot of people are like, oh, okay, like, 9 out of 10 businesses fail or something, which I think is like totally wrong. Businesses fail because people quit. If you like, for most of my friends that I know, if they spent 10 years doing a business, they're making like at least $500,000, $1 million profit. Some of them like took too much VC money to get there. So if you're making like $1 million profit, but you raise like 5 million, then you don't see any liquidity, which is a problem because you spent like 5-10 years. So, but if you don't take that much money and if you could take that out as liquidity, then like most of my friends, that if they spent that amount of time, 10 years, then they'd have a good outcome. I think it's, if you take, and it's like that for any like field, right? It takes 10 years to be a doctor or a lawyer. It would almost seem absurd if somebody was like 2 years into med school, 3 years into med school, hey, I'm dropping out because I'm not making any money yet. It's like, well, like, no shit, you're still like in college, right? Yet a lot of founders are like, okay, 1 year, 2 years, I'm not making money, I can't get traction, I quit. It's like, well, it takes 10 years, like any other profession. So I think that is probably misrepresented in, just in people's perspectives.
Could you share about, so how are you approaching the accelerator differently? Because you're writing checks. How are you doing it? And what's your...
I'm writing like pretty small checks, like 50K, maybe 100K, 50 to 100K. How I'm approaching it is like, my main goal is just to get as many people to try have a go at starting their own business as possible, because I think the risk reward ratio is like really good if you spend the time, which you'll have to do in any careers. I made a bunch of like YouTube videos on just like how I built my own business and like try to make a little mini course out of it, make it as like actionable as I can. And then I've been buying a lot of like views to that, because it's like a cent or a fraction of a cent for views in a lot of developing countries or outside of the West. Yeah, so I bought like tens of millions of views to that. And from there, people would like apply to sort of join the accelerator. Honestly, I struggle to find more than 10 people a year that I could work like very closely with, like directly. But like my sort of thought is like, hopefully other people can maybe like get something out of like the videos or other stuff that I can like put up.
Yeah. For those 10 people, what attracts you to those 10 people? Is it people who are really strong ideas? I mean, is it caliber? Is it, something that's more bootstrappable in nature? How do you think about that?
I'm trying to do like first check idea stage, because as mentioned, I think that's the highest impact. It gets people to commit to like a career path of being a founder. I studied a lot of what like early YC Paul Graham, read all Paul Graham's essays, tried to study Peter Thiel a lot as well. I talked to some of the folks who set up the Thiel Fellowship initially, like Michael Gibson and them. So I've kind of borrowed from their approach of like, I'm trying to look for folks like very early in their career, maybe 1 to 3 years of work experience. So like, under 30, ideally like, ideally 25 or younger. And then I'm just looking for like really like simple things. So the questions that I'll ask might be like, what's your most impressive accomplishment? Like, how many books did you read last year and what did you learn from them? And yeah, just what's your business idea? And, they have to be technical. So people that not necessarily in like coding, but it could be in like biology or some engineering, some other technical field. I think if folks are young and they have done something impressive, or even if they like write really clearly and they're like, hey, I read like 30 books last year, and I could like, they show like a strong trajectory of like learning. That's a really good indicator. I think also they probably have to have some unique insight into a particular industry, because if they have like no insight, then it's like, okay, well, it takes some time to develop that muscle of like researching fields, industries deeply and coming up with like lots of ideas. I think I'm more looking at like, is like how strong of a learner and executor is a particular person, as opposed to like what have they done so far and how much traction do they have. So yeah, really just betting on like young people who like learn fast and can like execute. And then it's like, okay, well, in 10 years time, this person will probably like.
And when you think about all of this, have you any case studies or examples that you like out of the groups that you have already invested in?
I think it's too early to tell. So I'm doing like idea stage. So I've wrote, I think like 12 checks so far, idea stage. The most successful one's probably doing about, I don't know, maybe 30K revenue so far.
Yeah.
Raised the follow on from iterative.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see. But I think this is on like the scale of like 15 years. Yeah. I think, when I just went through StartMate, I did not like look good at all. I broke up with like 2 co-founders within the space of that program. There was no traction. And then it took me maybe another 2 years before I got like anywhere, to the point where I think some of the partners of that program were discussing, I think there was an email that went around. It was like, oh, why'd you let like this Rob guy into this program? Like, he doesn't listen, he's not getting anywhere. So I think is you can't tell, like on a timeline of a couple years, you can't tell. It's like a 15-year timeline.
Yeah. I'm so curious, when you entered StartMate, did you have the idea already for content management, or was it something else?
No, I had a different idea. I pivoted like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just a complete mess.
You walked through like what you walked in with and all the various ideas that you had, because you're searching for product market fit, right? So could you start from the
walked in with a software to manage viral ad campaigns. So you set up a prize, and then it's like referral tracking. So kind of like referral candy, where it's like, okay, if you refer like 10 friends, you get this prize. If you refer more, and then you have like a nice tracker. That didn't work because I couldn't get like e-commerce stores to implement it. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe people just didn't want to refer other people to stuff if they don't like believe in it themselves. What else do we look at? Like a social media dashboard sort of thing. I think ContactOut did come like fairly naturally though, because I was just like, okay, well, how did I even come across this? I was studying like recently exited companies, and I was like, okay, there was this company that exited. They sold for like 150 million. Managed to talk to somebody on the early team from that. He just so happened to like go to the same high school as me, and then he shared a lot of like ideas, and that kind of put me down that path. Yeah, in on a separate story, it's like like 2 co-founder breakups, and lots of other like not so smooth sailing.
Any personal story about a time that you've been brave?
I don't know if it's like one particular story, but I think I really resonate with like the man in the arena quote, where he says like, okay, well, even if you like try something and you fail for the rest of your life, it's like it's better than like not trying. That's sort of how I thought about like so a specific story would be when I decided to do like my own business. I dropped out of college, even though I had like 2 subjects left, because I didn't want to have a plan B. I was kind of like, okay, if I don't have a degree, I can never get a job in corporate. I'd be unemployable. So it's like succeed at business or die, or just like keep trying until I die. And then from the manner in the arena quote, what I thought about and what resonated was like, if I just keep trying to do like business for the whole rest of my life, and I still failed at the end of my life, I would still be okay with that, because at least I tried. And then I was just like, okay, well, this is what I love doing, so I'll just do this. But yeah, I think like choosing to do that.
Yeah, amazing. On that note, thank you so much for sharing. I'd like to summarize the 3 big takeaways. First of all, thanks so much for sharing about your company and what was it like to bootstrap it, in terms of how you went to figure out product market fit, figure out the competitive space, figure out how to build the features, and how to rally the team together. So really fascinating. Secondly, thanks for sharing about your approach to learning. So about how you go about not only doing research, but also how you think about researching sciences, kind of like some reflections about what you would do and travel back in time to help your younger self also kind of explore sciences and other topics. And lastly, thanks so much for sharing about adding your thoughts around fundraising and venture capital and about how you are also looking to invest and write checks to people, but try to do it in a way that really impacts them where it's most impactful, which is at the idea stage. So on that note, thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Thank you for listening to Brave. If you enjoyed this episode, please share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. We would also appreciate you leaving a rating or review. Head over to www.bravesea.com for member content, resources, and community. Stay well and stay brave.